Riley Gaines made waves, literally, for speaking out after tying UPenn swimmer Leah Thomas in the 2022 NCAA Division I Women's Swimming and Diving Championships. And of course, Thomas, as we've highlighted numerous times on this program, is a biological male swimmer who's on the women's team. Well, since then, Riley has traveled the country speaking out about the need to protect female spaces as well as sports. She's challenging the rules at the NCAA, USA Swimming, the International Olympic Committee, and other governing bodies. And she's been a huge encouragement to other female athletes, calling them to step forward and highlight why men competing in female sports is blatantly unfair and harmful. She joins me now to share her experiences. Riley, welcome to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
Well, it's always great to see you. Listen, let's begin, if we can, just with some of your story, particularly going back to, with your encounter with Leah Thomas. Some of our viewers and listeners may not know that. So if you can go back as far as you need to, but just share a moment what that was like for you.
Absolutely. So I grew up my whole life swimming. Started when I was 4 years old, went all the way through college. So I dedicated 18 years of my life to my sport. But my senior year was different. Actually, my junior year, I ended up finishing 7th in the country, which I was proud of, right? You know, being an All-American, you were top 8. But I knew when I finished 7th that it would be my goal my senior year to win a national title. I was right on pace to do that. About midway through my season, I was ranked 3rd in the country behind one phenomenal swimmer who I knew very well. Because like in most sports, your top tier athletes, you know of each other, regardless of where you're competing in the country, because you've grown up competing against each other. And she was in 2nd, and I was trailing her by maybe a few 100ths or 10ths of a second. But the swimmer who was ranked 1st, we had never heard of. And this is the first time I became aware of a swimmer named Leah Thomas. And there was a lot of red flags at the time. Again, unbeknownst to me, this was anything other than a female until an article came out disclosing very briefly that Leah Thomas is formerly Will Thomas and swam 3 years on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania before deciding to switch to the women's team. And so I was so shocked when I read this, but really I felt a sense of relief because I then went to look up who Will Thomas was. And I saw that this was a mediocre male swimmer at best, ranking 462nd in the country when competing against the men. But that's why I say I was relieved, because I thought the NCAA would see it how I saw it and how my parents saw it and my teammates and my coaches saw it, how anyone with a brain would probably comprehend this. But they did not see it that way. They saw nothing wrong with it. And so that first day of competition at our national championships, which keep in mind, this is the fastest meet in the world, Thomas swam to a national title, becoming the first male to win a Division I NCAA title against the women. You can see in this video right here. I mean, that's domination. Swimming is a sport that's measured down to the 100th of a second, and Thomas beat every girl by body lengths. At 6'4", might I add. But that next day of competition was a 200 freestyle, which almost impossibly enough, Thomas and I raced and we tied, meaning we went the exact same time down to the 100th of a second. And really what thrusted me into the stance that I've taken now is upon tying, we go behind the awards podium where the NCAA official looks at both Thomas and myself and says, "Great job, but you guys tied. And we only have one trophy, and we're going to give this trophy to Leah." And I was so taken aback. And I asked the question that no one dared ask all season. And I said, okay, why? I know we tied. I know, there's only one trophy, but why are you adamant on giving this trophy to a man in the women's 200 freestyle? And I actually appreciate their honesty, because he told me, well, we've been advised when pictures are being taken, we have to give the trophy to Thomas. But you can pose with this one, but you have to give yours back, Riley. You go home empty-handed. Leah takes the trophy home. End of story. And it was that moment that I knew it was. It's still unbelievable. But it was that moment when I knew I couldn't lie anymore, because I was lying up until that point.
Yeah, I've heard this story so many times, Riley, and every time it just I'm spellbound hearing you say it, and I'm as ticked off as though I was hearing it for the very first time every time you mention it, because you have the competition on the one side, but then there's just the presence of Leah Thomas in the locker rooms and the all of that sort of stuff where other women swimmers were affected, including yourself. Did anyone stick up for you and the other female athletes during all of this?
Really, no. Privately, of course, we would have conversations with our coaches and the parents and different people, even within the NCAA, who knew this was wrong. And of course, they felt ashamed of themselves for going along with it, but they didn't do anything about it. And that's why I waited. That's why I cowered for all season, really. By the time I learned who Leah Thomas was in November of 2021 until March of 2022, again, I had conversations about it and I expressed my opinions privately, but nothing where I was willing to take a public stance because I was scared. I was scared of the backlash. I was scared of the lies they told us, how they emotionally blackmailed us into silence. They told us that we would never get a job if we spoke out. We would lose our scholarship. We would lose our friends. You wouldn't get into grad school if you spoke out. They told us we would be murderers if we spoke out, because if any harm were to come towards Thomas's way and he were to harm himself, then we would be responsible for a murder or for a death, making us murderers. I mean, think about that. Wanting fair play, they were equating that to murder. And it worked. It worked in keeping us silent.
It's stunning to hear this. So tell us what was going through your mind, what was going through your heart before you started speaking out, because as you just described, there was tremendous intimidation. There was an attempt to do everything to force you to be silent about it. But there was a breakthrough where you started working through this and you said, I've got to speak out. So before that transition, in the midst of all that, what was going through your mind and your heart before you had that breakthrough?
There was a lot. I think one, knowing what we were going through in terms of, again, the silencing and kind of the attempts to re-educate us is what they called it. They wanted us to go to counseling if we felt uncomfortable in the locker rooms. Counseling, of course, provided through the LGBTQ Education Center. And knowing what we went through, knowing what the fight to even get women's sports, and not that long ago, right? I mean, Title IX was only enacted in 1972, which sounds like a long time ago. Sorry if you were born before 1972, but that sounds like you're old, huh?
No comment.
Sounds like sounds like a long time ago, but it's really not. I mean, this is only 51 years ago. And so thinking about the fight to get the opportunities that I was so blessed to have, and then thinking about the next generation of female athletes, next generation of women, or really of humans, especially Christians. I mean, what we're up against, and those who don't yet have a voice, those who don't yet understand the implications of what this means for them, that's who I'm fighting for. It's not for me. I'm done competing. No one wants to see me swim anymore. I'd probably drown at this point if I even tried. So it's not for me. It's so much bigger than me. And I think realizing that, seeing what I saw, facing what I faced, I felt like I was lying to myself. It felt wrong to watch this happen and do nothing about it.
Well, thank you for taking the stand, Riley. It's been an inspiration to thousands and thousands. So let's get into this. You just provided a perfect segue. You're now traveling all across this country. You're speaking out on this issue with great personal emotion and experience backing up your comments. Recently, you were in Oklahoma. You were in Texas. Tell us about what you've been doing, what you've been seeing, what you're hearing from people.
I've been doing absolutely anything and everything I can to make impact, to make changes to where no girl, no woman, regardless of what age, regardless of where you compete or what sports you're competing in, no girl should go through what we went through. Compare themselves physically to a man the humiliation in the locker room, and be told they're not worthy, that they don't matter. That's not true, but that's the message being sent to them. And so traveling, testifying, and encouraging others, letting them know that we are in the overwhelming majority and feeling how we feel, and letting them know that it's liberating to say the truth. And that speaks for any truth, but in regards to the truth that I'm speaking about, it's the most basic truth. To deny what a woman is to deny that the sky is blue. But they're asking us to do that. But once you know you don't have to adhere to those guidelines, it really does feel like a weight is off of your shoulders.
Well, absolutely no woman should face what you face, be it in the swimming pool or in the locker room, nor should a woman face what you have experienced even this past week in Texas with the protesters. Tell us a little bit about that, and not only in Texas, other places where you've been.
Yeah, it's become standard at this point. I'm actually more surprised when there's not protesters. And again, we're asking for the bare minimum here, right? Equal opportunity. We're asking for safety. We're asking for privacy as women in our sex-separated spaces. And so, yeah, protest has become standard, and we are seeing it across the country. I had a little more hope for Texas. This is Texas. What are protesters doing here? But they were there, and of course, it's the same thing. They have the same chants. They have the same posters. They're yelling profanities, obscenities. They're throwing glass bottles at our feet. They're dumping liquids on us. They're spitting in our faces. And again, they do it in the name of love. They do it in the name of inclusion and tolerance and all of those virtuous things. But what they're doing that's not love. That's not what love looks like. It's loving to say the truth. That is love. Ever heard of the term true love? Those terms are synonymous, truth and love. To lie
Absolutely.
is the exact opposite of that.
Absolutely. So our time is wrapping up. What keeps you energized? You're all over the place. What is the driving force that keeps you energized to do what you're doing?
Knowing I'm doing it for more than just myself. The messages I get every single day, you would die if you saw them. Actually, your heart would probably break. They're coming from female athletes. These are messages from parents. These are messages from coaches who don't know what to do. They need a voice, and I'm happy to be that megaphone for them. That's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me energized. I haven't gotten burnt out yet, and I have been. It's a toll. Make no mistake, it's a toll. It takes a toll on me, both physically, emotionally, on my marriage. But I just know how important it is and what's at stake if I don't. And fighting for that, fighting for sanity, for common sense, that's what's keeping me going. And of course, my faith. I would be remiss if I didn't mention my faith and just how important that is in this fight, and in this fight that is entirely spiritual.
Well, it is spiritual. All of this is a spiritual battle. And Riley, let me just tell you, we are so excited to have you joining us next month at the Pray Vote Stand Summit. And, we are hoping that this event will encourage people and help equip them to make an impact in their various spheres of influence. To wrap this up in the next 45 seconds or so, why do you think it's important for us for people to come together for events like this, to pray, to vote, and to take a stand?
For too long, we haven't. We're called the silent majority for a reason, and it's because we've been silent. We have to link arms. We have to stand together. We have to roll up our sleeves and say enough is enough. And doing it through prayer, doing it through voting. I mean, those are the principles that we all need to rely on. And so I couldn't be more excited for the event. Really, I think it'll be foundational, fundamental, really, in creating that impact and change that this country needs to see.
Thank you, Riley Gaines, for coming on the program with us this evening, and thank you for standing in there fighting the good fight. God bless you.
Of course. Thank you.